to the Global Studies podcast. My name is Alicia Mackey, and I am the Global Studies and Science teacher for 6th grade.
Good afternoon. My name is Gregory Wright. I am the Global Studies Coordinator and Global Solutions Liaison for Global Academies.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Eugene Kennebrew Jr. I'm 5th grade Global Studies educator.
Good afternoon. I'm Miss Rachel Veronis. I am the 4th grade Science and Global Studies teacher, and it's an honor to be here.
Awesome. So we are back for episode 4 of the Global Studies podcast, and we wanted to bring up a topic today that's kind of geared towards the city of Philadelphia. Not only how we can help, but what problems that we're kind of seeing in the communities where we as citizens can do a better job.
In addition to that, part of our mantra here is creating or developing future leaders of the world. So what we want to do is make sure that our young people understand that they can start this in terms of their leadership responsibilities as citizens of Philadelphia right now. So you don't have to wait to be a certain age to do this. They can get involved and active in this immediately.
Awesome. So we're here to talk a little bit about one of the problems that we are facing, which is Philly's trash problem. We have persistent waste and litter issues. Many of you may have seen just walking down the streets, thinking about how we can come up with a solution to clean streets, and thinking about what is our trash made up of, and realizing that 40% of the food that we buy goes to food waste. So we're thinking about litter, we're thinking about food, and we're thinking about good, fresh produce and fruits and vegetables that are going to waste, and how we can work on this.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that, because thinking about Philadelphia and you're thinking about families of color or urban families, we're thinking about how we're getting nutritious foods, where we're getting our foods from, what we're putting in our bodies. And we're seeing that it's easier for people of color, especially in neighborhoods that are low income. We're finding it easier to go to our corner stores and to get meals that are maybe $5 that aren't as healthy versus going to the grocery store and spending about $30, $40 on fruits and vegetables. And I guess my question would be, especially being in the community of color, we suffer from higher rates of diseases like heart disease and different things that are harder for Black people to be successful in a health environment. I guess my question would be, how can we as people, and especially people of color, come to these better decision makings when it comes to putting food in our body? And not only that, but how can we pass this message to everyone else in the city as well?
If I could chime in, I think is going to take a whole paradigm shift, right? Because we've grown up at grandmom's house on Sunday afternoons. We've been to the Thanksgiving smorgasbords. We've been to and watch this, and have made several rounds at the home, to our family houses where we knew Auntie so and so made the best macaroni, and and Uncle so and so made the best sweet potatoes, and it's it is a conditioning that we have as people of color. There are no recipes, right? We knew, child, we don't need the recipe. You don't need that to use this much here, right? And we have come to become used to certain foods, right? And so the paradigm shift comes in now, where we have the research and the data is out about, one, the health risks from diabetes to heart, to overweight, and to high blood pressure, etc. You ask yourself, why the food was good, but was it good for us, right? And so now with looking at what we do here at GLA, having these sustainable food centers, like we have one in Southwest. We used to have, I believe we still have one out back here at West, where, the foods were grown and we would give them away, right, to the families. We still have healthy food giveaways here now due to the COVID situation. But the bottom line is, it's a paradigm shift, right? It's a paradigm shift. How much sugar is not enough? I can't use sugar no more? What do you mean? You told me I could use sugar for how long? Now I can't have no more sugar? So, it's something that we, all have to reckon with.
We are completely rethinking food chains. You're so right, too, with this idea of, the food supply chain, and how are we going to now get these healthier ingredients that we now know about, and cutting out the middlemen. So like you were saying, we have this beautiful garden greens. We have GLA families literally cutting the greens and and spreading them so that we can cook. There's something called Philabundance, which is rescuing tens of millions of meals every year. Food Connect, something called Food is In. So it's like food it forward instead of like pay it forward. So it's interesting because one of the biggest critiques of our city is like we're always collecting data. We're realizing that there are these places that don't have the fresh produce. But now it's like, okay, we have all this data collected. Now what are we going to do? Now how are we going to rethink these food supply chains and make action?
I think going back to the trash issue, one of the most effective things, especially for scholars here at GLA, you want to set that precedent in terms of community activism, is having scholars actually do those community projects, one of which is going to various neighborhoods to begin a recycling project, to do a community cleanup. I'm not mistaken, I think maybe my first year here at GLA, there were actually a few opportunities for scholars to engage the community with a few of those projects. So I know in the midst of the COVID pandemic, we're kind of pivoting a few different ways to continue on the process of our community activism. But hopefully, with the coming of spring, we can actually get back out there and have the scholars really engage the community, because that, when folks from the community, especially elders, see young people in the community, being, forthright with kind of coming in to do the cleaning and kind of, taking care of trash, it really sets that connection from, as we say, like we got to do a kind of paradigm shift. The elders see that paradigm shift in just small, meaningful ways, and that really that continues to connect the community.
It's so true. And these kids know what's up. Like, we were learning about pollution last week, and they told me about the YouTube influencers that were getting pushed to do something. And they were telling me about, for example, Mr. Beast, who's charting Save Trees and Save Seas. And then we watched it, and it was so cool, like watching how fast trees get cut down and realizing how much time it then takes to rebuild. And it was so cool because he used his juice on Twitter and YouTube and Insta and TikTok to get everybody out. And he was out in like Oregon, and he put out a Twitter, and the next day he had like 250 more volunteers. So using your influence and your power as young millennials to change the world.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you talked about like influencers that we have. I know here in Philly, we have I think his Instagram is like your favorite trash man or something, and he kind of goes around the city and he shows how we as a people could get really involved in the community. And Dr. K, you brought up community a lot, and I think that's the forefront of this entire conversation, right? Is the community, is our community, and getting everyone involved, because it takes a village to do anything, right? It takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to make a change. So when we're looking at, these types of topics, and we're looking at community, and we're looking at building, and we're looking at influence, I think some of these conversations that you can have at home with your scholars really hone in on the importance of keeping the community at the forefront. And especially in the community of color, we have to work 10 times harder at what we do. So as long as we're all on board, I think that kind of builds what Mr. Wright was saying, that paradigm shift. It brings a stronger conversation to the forefront.
I would just also add, just to, I guess, the one connect or the bridge to bring both topics together, from the food deserts or the sustainable food systems to making sure our city is cleaner. If we can have the thought, starting with our scholars, to act locally but think globally, in the sense that if I can start taking care of my own little neighborhood, or if I can just put my own trash in the proper dispensal receptacle in my classroom, translate that to the schoolyard, translate that to their rooms. I'm sure their mothers and parents will appreciate taking care of their classroom. I mean their bedrooms, right? Without the first time, not without having to say it 4 times, right? And to then go up and down the block. Because once we start taking care of our surroundings, then what happens is you don't know, talk about influencers, how many others will just join in. And next thing you know, not only one block, 2 blocks, next thing you know, the whole community is operating on the same thought process, same paradigm shift, same mindset.
So true. And when we put pressure on ourselves, then we are taking the weight off of the big guys all the way at the top. So thinking about how we as a community can work small, start where we are, and use as many local people, local businesses. We have the urban composting facility. Thinking about these ways that we can take away from major corporation and go small.
Absolutely. Well, this concludes episode 4 of the Global Studies Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed this episode and catch us next time on episode 5. We definitely want to keep having you tune in, so tell a friend to join in on the Global Studies conversation.
We are GLA. We are the future leaders of the world.